Hello, welcome to TMH English News. I'm Delithna Dabalko with your daily news. Ethiopian government yesterday conducted yet another airstrike in the suburbs of the regional capital of Tigray. Tigray government dubs international response to Abiy Ahmed's government scheme to starve Tigrayans to death incomprehensibly negligible. WFP chief calls airstrike that caused the rerouting of the UN flights last Friday as extremely reckless. The Ethiopian government yesterday conducted another airstrike in the Kuha subsidy of Ma'ala. Government spokesperson Lagasa Tulu told Addis Standard and the local media that airstrikes hit 2 kilometers away from Alula Abega's international airport in Ma'ala. Government spokesperson Salamawit Kasa said yesterday airstrikes targeted a training center for the Tigrayan police, but observers say the airstrikes could have targeted civilians in this subsidy. The airstrikes yesterday is part of the nearly daily air bombardment of the capital since the 18th of October. So far, the airstrikes have killed 5 civilians and injured several others. Tigray TV also reported the fighter jets bombed farmland in area 25 kilometers east of Ma'ala, in which last week Ethiopia's Air Force carried out 8 airstrikes. Most were in and around Ma'ala, but on Sunday the military confirmed strikes further afield in Adwa to the north of the capital, and another at Maitz-Evri in western Tigray. The Tigrayan forces said the strikes were evidence of the government's disregard for civilian lives. Western powers, including the U.S. government, condemned the airstrikes as an unacceptable risk to these civilians. A strike Friday on Ma'ala forced a UN flight carrying 11 humanitarian personnel to turn back to the Ethiopian capital of Addis Ababa, and the UN subsequently announced it was suspending its twice weekly flights to this region as well. The bombings in Tigray have drawn international censure and disrupted the UN access to the region, where an estimated 400,000 people are facing famine and under Abiy's government blockade. Earlier in the month, it said the number of young children hospitalized due to severe humanitarian malnutrition between February and August has doubled the number recorded during the same period last year. AFP has documented starvation deaths in multiple parts of Tigray based on internal documents from aid groups active here. Members of Ma'ala University community have condemned airstrikes that targeted the university last Friday. Ma'ala University is one of the public institutions affected by last week's bombardment of the capital, and Haile Tuku, a PhD candidate at the university, is one of the 11 civilians injured in the aerial bombardment around the university's main campus.
The last Friday, October 22, 2021, GC, there was air bombardment in capital city of Tigray, Mekele, around specific place around Ainalem farm place and around Mekele University main campus, or common name Arid. So during that time, I was one of the 11 victims, but now thanks to God, God saved my life. I'm alive. The Ethiopian government lies always. He didn't hit his target because around Mekele University there is no military base, so the target is not on military campus or depots and others, but it is on civilians. This is the continuance of genocide or ethnic cleansing.
Tekas Berhanu, vice president of Ma'ala University, told Tigray TV that the university property was damaged in these airstrikes that put the lives of the university community in extreme danger.
It's really pity to see a government bombarding its own people. Last week we've seen many bombardments, and they all target civilians and civilian infrastructures. There is no reason to bombard Mekele because there is no military base. But the government, I cannot say my government, the government of Ethiopia has bombarded Mekele, has killed many civilians and injured many civilians, and has also destroyed infrastructure that the civilian people uses. For example, Mekele University. Last time it attacked around Mekele University. So many of the buildings are broken now. The windows are broken now. So the purpose is clear. The purpose is not to attack the military base. The purpose is to clear Tagaru and Tigrayans from this world.
Both Haile and the vice president of the university called on the international community to take practical action against those perpetrating such atrocities against these civilians.
As a staff, I give my free service in either comprehensive hospital, one branch of Mekelle University, and I see there so many patients they are suffering from lack of medication. This is the reality. So my message to the international community, especially to I think President Joe Biden, is we need action now.
The international community has done so far very good. Okay, they have expressed their concern. They have shown their support to the Tigray people, but what is lacking is, the practical action. Okay, our people are starving. Many people are dying because of famine, and there is no medicine. Okay, so there is no hospital services, so people are dying, and we are 360 degree in a blockade. So we are not able to send out and receive in. So even the humanitarian aid cannot come to Tigray. So we are in a very dire situation. So the international community should take practical action against Abiy and Isaias as well.
The university's budget has been discontinued since last June when Abiy Ahmed's forces were forced out of the city. The government of Tigray says international response to Abiy's government's deliberate scheme to starve Tigrayans to death has been incomprehensibly negligible. Tigray External Affairs Office in its weekly briefing said Abiy's cruel, inhumane, and morally repugnant blockade of Tigray has been met by nothing more than incest extortion to lift the siege. The office said a regime that has deliberately placed a deadly chokehold in its own citizens cannot be swayed by strongly worded statements of concern alone. The aerial bombardment of Ma'ala and other areas in Tigray, along with the regime's deliberately endangering of a UNHCR flight on 22nd of October, exemplifies what the office called the government's pathological contempt for basic rules and norms. The briefing stressed only a robust package of punitive measures could better deter this criminal regime from further acts of lawlessness. According to Tigray External Affairs Office, the humanitarian partners estimate 282 trucks must enter Tigray daily to meet these needs, while still making up for the lost ground. Yet between October 13th and the 19th, only 215 trucks arrived in Tigray, and no trucks have come ever since. According to the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, since the 12th of July, only 15% of these trucks needed for humanitarian operations have arrived in the city of Tigray. Spokesperson for the UN Secretary General says access to the northern part of the country remains extremely challenging. Stefan Dujarric, in his noon briefing yesterday, said humanitarian conditions in Tigray continue to deteriorate due to restrictions imposed by Abiy's government by the only route through Afar.
Since October 18th, there's been no movement of convoys with humanitarian supplies in the region. It's since October 18th. A reminder that an estimated 100 trucks with food, non-food items, and fuel are required in Tigray daily to meet critical humanitarian needs. Fuel for the humanitarian response has not entered Tigray since August. 16 fuel tankers, each with a capacity of about 45,000 liters, remain idle in Samara. Due to the severe fuel shortages, many humanitarian partners have been forced to significantly reduce or suspend their activities. That includes food deliveries and water trucking. In addition to this, the suspension of the UN's humanitarian flights that follows last Friday's incident also means that much needed cash cannot be transported into Tigray. The humanitarian situation in Afar and Amhara regions is also deteriorating.
He also added that fuel supplies in the region of Tigray are running dangerously low and the aid distribution cannot happen once it's finished. In related news, the World Food Program chief, David Beasley, told CNN that his organization is out of fuel and cash in the region of Tigray, and that supplies have been blocked from entering this region.
We're barely getting enough trucks into the Tigray northern Ethiopian area. Maybe to support 15% of the people. I don't know where they're getting the food from. Hopefully we will come out of the field in the next few weeks showing the reality that exists, but there's no way that the people are surviving there. We're out of fuel, we're out of cash in terms of paying our people, and we're running out of money, and we can't get our trucks in. I had literally 10 trucks that would provide the fuel that we need to push food and medicines out there for a solid 2 weeks. Just for 2 weeks, 10 trucks. Been sitting at a checkpoint, guess how long? 2 months.
2 months?
Months.
And you run the fuel, as I understand it, for other agencies?
So we move the fuel for other agencies that are also feeding people, providing medical care, all the humanitarian needs, and the people that are in crisis because the economy there is completely shut down because of the war.
David Beasley called the airstrikes that caused the rerouting of the UN flight last Friday as extremely reckless.
We fly at WFP, we call it UNHAS, flies from Addis into Mekelle, and that's where we deliver our humanitarians and cash to pay our humanitarians and workers on the ground there. And the flight had been, because we deconflict, we work in war zones. We know how to do this. We do it all the time, whether it's Yemen, Syria, doesn't matter. So we're pros, experts of working in combat areas. We deconflict, all sides are put on notice, they agree, the plane's flying in, it's a few minutes for landing, and guess what? Boom. There's an explosion on the ground right near the airport, a military strike. I mean, come on. You knew our plane was in the air. How can this happen? Obviously, abort, and we go back to Addis Ababa. What if our plane had been shot out of the air, intentionally or unintentionally? This is reckless.
The UN also added last week that the fuel shortage had forced some relief groups to suspend food distributions in the region where more than 5.2 million people are in need. Tigray TV shows Abiy's government child soldiers captured by the Tigray armed forces, and Abiy's government child soldiers captured by the Tigray armed forces and interviewed on Tigray TV say they were forcibly recruited by Abiy's government. One of the officials of the government of Tigray, Kindeya Gabrehiwet, wrote on his Twitter, "Anyone who cares about recruitment of child soldiers can visit the POWs at Ma'ala." Abiy and his genocidal criminals have accused the TDF of recruiting child soldiers. Observers say, unfortunately, some in the international community took to that rhetoric at the face value, despite the fact that this is the opposite to the reality on the ground. 2 U.S. senators and House Republicans urge Ethiopia to correct course or risk revocation of its AGOA benefits. Senate Foreign Relations Committee Ranking Member Jim Risch and House Foreign Affairs Committee Ranking Member Michael McCall issued a statement advising the Ethiopian government to correct course or face revocation of the African Growth and Opportunity Act benefits. The statement came as the Biden administration is expected to announce its decision on Ethiopia's eligibility to continue to the benefit from the AGOA as early as November. Ethiopia has been campaigning to avoid revocation amidst growing concerns that Biden administration was preparing to remove Ethiopia from AGOA eligibility. The two Senate and House Republicans, Risch and McCall, agreed that AGOA trade benefits have been a strong component of the job creation in Ethiopia, and the U.S.-Ethiopian bilateral trade relationship has generated economic benefit for both countries since the year 2000. However, they expressed their deep concerns by credible reports of gross violation of human rights. They cautioned that it was up to Prime Minister Abiy to take immediate concrete action to avoid further gross violations of human rights and to bring Ethiopia into compliance with its obligations. Both the Ethiopian people and the eligibility requirements of this trade preference program as soon as possible. The U.S. officials said if Ethiopia's AGOA benefits are revoked, the responsibility will fall solely upon the government of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Thank you for tuning in to our news for today, and we'll have more for you tomorrow. Have a great night.